And wherever you are in this wide, wonderful world, you're very welcome to the Soft and System Size to Sales. And this week we are speaking about feedback and feedback from your team, but also giving feedback to your team and people around you. We're actually live in person today. So thank you, Shay, for inviting me round.
My pleasure, Jason. Great to have you
What
here.
a wonderful studio that we have set up here. So looking forward to this, and we shall see you in a couple of moments. So you're very welcome again, and the Soft and System Size to Sales. Every week we speak about an exciting subject in around leaders and leadership for the future. But today we're speaking about a particular good and wonderful subject around about feedback.
Feedback, yeah.
So Shay, let's talk about feedback, and what do you think?
Well, feedback is everything, Jason. Feedback is everything. You can only improve if you've got feedback. So when I look at companies, when I'm working with them to build a sales model, a sales funnel, a sales process, I break it down to every minute step, to the lowest common denominator all the way along. And I literally look for feedback at every step, because what I want to do to help companies improve their performance is make sure they can get to the next micro step as efficiently as possible, and making allowances for all the different potential barriers that will stop them getting there. So that feedback is really important. That's on the lower level scale, and that's really important, Jason, because if you can improve your conversions at those micro steps, your end conversions will greatly improve. So you're making sure every part of the process is effective, efficient and effective, right? That's number one, Jason. But then there's feedback on the higher, on the macro level. When you're looking at your weekly dashboards, your monthly dashboards, it's about what did we do well as a team? What didn't we do well? What didn't work well? What do we need to change next period?
So what I'm thinking of in terms of feedback is feedback from your team, specifically about you and your performance, and ways for you to actually present yourself a lot better back to the team. So I think that's a really essential process to know where you are, because it's all about how you can better help others achieve what they want. But if you're not effectively helping them, then there's something wrong in that process. So getting feedback, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, is for you to just take it on board and go, let me have a look at that. Let me just see and take that back and reflect, rather than instantly react and get defensive about it, because it should be positive feedback. It shouldn't be, everything should be constructive about how you can personally, as a team leader, perform better and help your team and maybe your peers around you to get better at what you do. You might be new into being as a leader. You might not have all the core skills. And I've worked with team leaders before, and they don't possess all the skills. And then they get that imposter syndrome going, hang on a minute, my team are actually putting me down, or they're giving me this feedback and I don't know what to do with it. So then you need either to just take yourself back and just write down all the core areas that they're asking you to improve on, and just think about ways and strategies that you can improve on, whether it's more self-development, performance management, or leadership courses that you go on, or your boss or bosses actually come back to you and ask help in developing yourself. So I think that's imperative for you to perform better as a leader.
Yeah. So there's two things, Jason, we talked about there. I was talking about the process feedback, and you're talking about the individual feedback from a individual performance level. So when you're talking about that, Jason, what's really important to me, right, when I'm giving or receiving feedback, it's both. Because when I like feedback is great, Jason, but it has to be constructive, right?
Absolutely.
It has to be
Yeah.
constructive. And when I'm giving feedback to a team, like it's important to make sure you keep that person motivated, number one, right? So keep them motivated. Like you need to tell them what they were good at and remind them what they were good at. And then tell them, look, there's a few opportunities here to improve. It's not that you're not good at something, there's opportunities. So you can frame it in a positive manner. And here's how I'd like to help you improve it. And I'd like to work with you to make sure you understand and you get better. And if there's anything you would like to add to that as well, if you agree, disagree, let's build something together and I will work with you through the next steps. So it's not just about going, you're not very good, like crack the whip, you got to move on, get it sorted, make it better. No, it's about working together to make it better, Jason. You can't just, it's like if people give me feedback, and because like us, we're both third parties, we go into business, we get a lot of noise thrown at us. And I'll go, thank you for that. Tell me why you didn't like it.
Yep.
And let's make it specific. If it stays up there in the cloud and very generic, not interested. It's no use to me. If they do have something really specific, tell me, then I can work with that and do something better.
I think that's really important when we do go into organizations and we do coaching or training, is to get that assessment back from one thing I was just thinking of, and before I get to that point is start off with where they actually are first, how they actually think and feel about their situations, their performance, and rate themselves. Then afterwards, get a feedback and some assessment on how well they're actually doing in terms of did they feel like there was a behavioral shift? Did they really understand the process? Did they whatever things it might be, to enable you to actually be, okay, well, this is what I need to do next time to improve. Come to your point is always about situational awareness, but feed forward. Because you got feedback, which is good. You got feedback to where you were, but you need feed forward so you know where you are now and where you need to go to the next time that you are doing that. And it's good to get feedback from every single person that you've been coaching and training. So as you say, you know where you want to go and where specifically where you need to improve on. Could just be something really small or could something big. You just don't know.
Yeah, but what we're talking about here, Jason, is high performance, right? We're talking about high performance in multiple levels because if you think about it, a team is made up of a manager, stroke leader, and then you got the individuals. So if you break that performance down, you've got the leader performance, you've got the team as a whole performance, achieving targets and so forth, and then you've got the individual performance. Feedback is paramount for every single one of them to improve. So feedback, you can't improve without feedback, Jason. If someone tells you you're really good, really good all the time, you're not learning anything. Or even the other thing, Jason, what I don't like seeing is if I do something wrong and you tell me this is how you do it, I don't learn. All I hear is that you do it better than me. Right?
That's not the right way of doing it. It's instructional.
It's instructional, right? So if I'm a leader, like I like to work it out with them, ask them open questions. So why do you think that didn't go so well? And draw them in, get them to think for themselves and go, eventually go, yes, now I get it. And then we go, so what can you do next time to ensure this doesn't happen again? And then you work with them. And then when you see them grow, that's works for me as a leader because I can see I've helped them. They're doing something about it. They've taken positive action and being proactive with it, and they've improved. So bit by bit, they get better and better, Jason. And that's how you should. It's not about cracking the whip and saying you got to do 10% more next week. It's all about working together to make it better.
Well, that goes over people's heads. They get intimidated by that. If you always like to say, and something that I learned as a very young age from a mentor of mine, is telling isn't selling. So when you tell, you're almost, the other person goes over their heads because it's not actually going in. So when you ask really good, powerful questions, even when you're selling, you ask good, powerful questions, the who's, the what's, the when's, the why's, but also when you're coaching your team after feedback or they're giving you feedback, you ask the who's, the what's, the when's, the why's, the how's as well. Good open questions to help them unpeel the onion to get to the core of the challenge or the issue, whatever it might be, so they can improve. And inadvertently, you've understood them and you understand how to help them further with what the challenge or issue might be. It's coaching. That is what coaching actually is, but it's based on the powerful feedback that you're actually getting from that end user.
Yeah, and exactly, Jason, because the goal, if like I always say this, my background is lean and Six Sigma, and that's all about speed and quality together, right? Effectiveness is what I say. You're getting through a process as quickly as possible without rushing it, without compromising quality. But that's one level of it. And the other thing about lean, the other really important point, it's continual improvement. You don't just make one improvement and that's it. It's static for the rest of time. You're never going to improve it again. It's about those continual iterative little steps. Because what happens when you make little steps over time, Jason, they accumulate and compound over time. So if you think about it, if you worked and try and get your team to improve by 2% every week, or even just say every month, you've got 5 people doing that, and they 2% on top of 2% on top of 2%. That's a substantial. That would bring you up to somewhere in between 40 to 50% over time. And so it's all those little baby steps improvements that you can see that journey all the way through. And the goal is of a leader to make that environment, to build that environment so people can actually, and the other really important thing about this whole culture and mechanism, Jason, is to allow people to have the confidence to put their hand up and say, I made a mistake. Can you please help me? As opposed to, again, crack the whip and then they hide the mistakes. And again, no learning happens, Jason.
I think that's really, really important, is to know your vulnerable spots. But also, if people are actually saying to you, you actually do something about it, because that's the most important thing. And if you don't do anything about it, what's going to happen to your team? They're just going to think you're not improving yourself. They don't care about me. It's do as I say culture, not what I do. It's practice what you preach, and all of those cliche things that we hear again and again and again. Understanding yourself is the primarily thing first that you have to do as a leader. And this takes time. I'm not saying that you're going to get it straight away. The more you understand yourself, the more you understand maybe your weaknesses, you understand your strengths and how you are as a person, the better that you're going to help others to get what they want in terms of building their confidence, self-esteem, or whatever. Then you can actually understand other people from an empathetic point of view and make them grow. But also in the same term, you help yourself to make yourself grow. Do what you need to do to learn. I always say, you don't know everything as a leader. No, try and find help from someone else, like yourself, Shay. If I'm stuck with something, I might ring you up and go, Shay, would you help me out with this? Because I don't know some of the areas that I'm not strong in. So just be honest with yourself. I think that's absolutely core.
It's the only way you improve, if you be honest with yourself, Jason, because when you're honest with your leaders, with your teams, then everybody knows where everybody is. And then, as you said, Jason, if I'm naturally not so strong on one element of the sales funnel and you are, then we work together. I may say, you know what, let me do these elements for you, and then you can do those elements for me. And then it becomes a stronger process. And the only way you can find that out, Jason, by asking questions. I have this thing I always say to leaders: questions are the answers, right? Always ask the questions, because again, Jason, going back to, and this is something I've worked with clients in the past, and when I had a sales team underneath me, that when you have different elements of the sales funnel, there's different skill sets required, right? So I may be naturally good at some elements, maybe towards the end of the funnel. You could be better at the start. So why don't we play to our strengths? Why don't we do that and work together to see, can we make the best version of this sales funnel we possibly can? And that's the only way you do that, Jason, is by going back to your point about counseling, asking questions, finding out what are the natural strengths of your team. Feedback, get that feedback. And then how can you get them to use their strengths so they're happy, they're better, because they're using things they're naturally good at. And there's a reason why people are good at it, because they like doing things, Jason, right? So imagine you learn all these things got all the different teams, and then you brainstorm together. Well, how do we best build this process together? Work with them.
I think that's a natural reflection back. And if is something that you get feedback from your team, everyone in your team has different strengths. And I think brainstorming that as an idea to help everyone learn and grow at the same time and build those little steps out so everyone can see how they can personally improve on themselves. And it is the one-to-ones sessions that you do have with your individual members of the team. And it could be a mutual way of feedback so you can understand them better, understanding their strengths, but also how you can build better connection with them. The more you understand them, the better that they're going to open up to you, and they can give you some direct constructive feedback, but also you can give them really good, honest, positive ways to move forward.
Yeah, and that's it, Jason. The whole point is to motivate your team, engage with your team. And when you see opportunities for elements of your team members to improve, you work with them. And again, it's not just about telling them you're not good at this, sort it out. I think there's an opportunity to work and develop this part of your skill set. How do you think, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good idea? And if they do, well, what's the next steps? You don't tell them, right? Let them draw it out for themselves. Because here's the thing, Jason, I always have this thing, and this just doesn't apply to sales leaders, it applies to everyone, but I think it's more so important with sales leaders. And we can go on about that conversation for a long time. But what I'm looking to say is that the goal of a leader is to create a culture in a team and an operating model that when that leader is away on business, that will perform without that person there. And the only way you can do that is developing your team, counseling your team, working with them to find out where do they think is the best thing. And by the way, Jason, you may know the answer to that, but that's of no use. As I said before, that's just telling everyone you know it better than them. They may not. They may come up with their first best version of that. It may not be 100%, but guess what? It's their process. They buy into it, so they will work it. And then you go to, as I said, the continuous improvement. Let's go round two. How can we tweak it? And eventually they'll end up at the same point that you know, but you made them accountable for it. I think that's really important.
I think accountability as the team is just so very important. And I stumbled there, but I was just thinking about you being self-accountable. Your team members should be self-accountable for their own actions and recognize what they do, because that's their own feedback there. And understanding, so hang on, Shay, this is my own feedback and this is what I'm recognizing myself. I probably need a little bit of help here with yourself or any other members of the team that can possibly help me with the sales process. I'm stuck in here with engaging with the client. I'm stuck here with creating those decks or whatever it might be. That's your own personal feedback. And I think that's a really good core area for self-improvement, but self-development for themselves to learn and grow. But that's based on their own feedback. We can help them. And as you said, asking some good questions so they unpeel the onion and so they can just go, well, this is right for us. This is how we can learn and grow and get better at what we do.
Absolutely, Jason. And that's, as I said, what you said there, it's all about continually getting better. There's no end to improvement, right? There's always something to improve. Interpersonal skills, your personal skills, performance, human performance, your process skills, leadership skills. There's always something to work on, Jason. And you can have different phases or different teams for different periods. And I always believe, Jason, again, I find it's really more powerful when it comes to sales team, because you think of sales teams, they're mostly individual, and they're really good. They're usually self-motivated and they do their own thing and they get their own results. When you build that, when you get that culture, them helping each other, they really thrive, because once they see what's in it for them, the adoption, the buy-in is amazing, and they just go from strength to strength.
We've pretty much hit the 20-minute allocation that we give ourselves every single week on that particular subject. and we change the subjects every single week. So we can give you some golden nuggets of knowledge based on our experience. Please share any questions that you do have about this or any other subjects that we covered over the last weeks and the future weeks, and other subjects that you might want to discuss with us that you want to find the answer, or you can add it into the conversation as well. So Shay, the question is every week, what one thing have you taken from this?
I'm going to say, again, we're talking about feedback. The team is feedback. So I'm going to say, Jason, the questions are the answers. I said that already, but it's really powerful.
That's really good. I would say create that high performance psychological safety within your unit, within your team or teams, that they feel supported, that they can approach you and give you some feedback. And exactly the same, backwards and forwards, positive culture.
Brilliant.